My boyfriend was seriously injured in a car accident and suffered broken legs. During that time, I stayed by his side and took care of him for 5 whole years. Just when we were preparing to get married, his first love returned. He seemed to have forgotten all her flaws and chose to accept her back, even using the excuse of fulfilling her last wish to let her move into our new home. I couldn't stand it, so I asked him to choose between her and me, but he appeared very hesitant. At that moment, my heart, which had loved him for 5 years, was completely shattered. When I found a new lover, he cried and said he regretted it. In the jewelry store, I excitedly presented a beautiful pair of wedding rings to Ethan Jones. "Honey, look at this. Do you like them?" Sitting in a wheelchair, Ethan Jones glanced coldly at the rings and looked at me with a grim expression. "What's wrong? Don't you like them?" I watched him cautiously, unsure of what had upset him this time. Ever since his car accident had left him with injuries to both legs, his demeanor had become even more sullen and sensitive. "Emily Smith, come here for a moment," Ethan Jones said as he turned his wheelchair and left the counter, heading to the break area. I immediately followed him. Noticing the serious expression on his face, I realized he might have something important to tell me. I didn't press him for answers. I just quietly looked at him, waiting for him to speak. He told me that Mandy Johnson's leukemia had reached its advanced stage and that she had returned home yesterday. Her last wish was for him to spend the next 6 months with her, so he planned to bring her here to live with us. Ethan Jones said this calmly, but my heart tightened suddenly, and my face reflected my shock. "We're about to get married, and you mean to say that you'd let her live with us after we're married?" I asked. He made a unilateral decision and then informed me without asking for my opinion. I didn't hide my dissatisfaction, and my expression instantly turned cold. I completely disagreed. Ethan Jones glanced at me coldly and let out a sigh of resignation. "Can hardly hold on any longer. It's only been half a year. Can't you be a little less heartless?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Heartless? We just got married, yet you openly brought your first love home to live with us. Anyone who doesn't know would think we're a trio. What do you take me for? Don't you think that's the real heartlessness towards me?" Ethan Jones's expression turned cold as he said somewhat angrily, "Emily Smith, I never thought you could be such a cold and selfish person. She is so seriously ill. What else can I do?" "I just want to fulfill her last wish," I replied. "Then you should focus on fulfilling her wish first. After you see her off for the last time in 6 months, we can discuss marriage." I didn't notice Ethan Jones's icy expression as I wiped my tears and ran out. Mandy Johnson was his first love. They grew up together and even got into the same university, making them an enviable couple. However, I had secretly been in love with Ethan for 4 years, but fate took an unexpected turn in the year they graduated from college. After graduation, Ethan Jones drove Mandy Johnson on a trip to the prairies, but they were involved in a car accident along the way. In a critical moment, Ethan Jones struggled to steer the wheel successfully, allowing Mandy Johnson to avoid a fatal collision. But unfortunately, he ended up injuring both of his legs. Worse still, they originally planned to get engaged after their trip. But due to the car accident, they faced rejection from the Johnson family. Mandy Johnson was also sent abroad. The reason for the Johnson family's refusal was their inability to accept a disabled person as their son-in-law. During his most challenging times, I volunteered to provide him with emotional support, and gradually We developed a deep bond. After he confessed his feelings to me, I stood by his side and took care of him for 5 years. I never expected that Mandy Johnson would return on the eve of our wedding. What surprised me even more was that she had late-stage leukemia, and her last wish was to have Ethan Jones by her side. After leaving the jewelry store, I wandered aimlessly on the street, unsure of where to go. My parents died in a plane accident when I was little, and 3 years ago, my grandmother, who raised me, also passed away. In this world, Ethan Jones had become my only support. But now, I never expected that he would become unreliable too. In the end, I went to the small courtyard that my grandmother left behind, tidied it up a bit, and settled down there. In the past few days, I've been spending all my time in the yard, feeling very sad as I think about the issues between Ethan Jones and me. In the evening, Ethan Jones sent me a message saying, "Come back. We can talk about anything." I thought he was making a compromise regarding Mandy Johnson moving into our marital home. However, when I hurriedly took a taxi back to our home, I saw Mandy Johnson affectionately giving Ethan Jones a shoulder massage. The two of them were chatting happily, and the room was filled with laughter. When they saw me coming back, their movement suddenly halted. Mandy Johnson stood up and smiled at me. "Emily Smith, you're back." Mandy Johnson added, "Ethan used to have stiff shoulders. Make sure to help him out with a massage whenever you have the chance." Looking at Mandy Johnson's glowing complexion and cheerful demeanor, it was hard to believe she was someone battling advanced leukemia. Her tone felt nothing like that of a guest. In fact, she spoke more warmly than even a hostess. I shot her a cold glance and responded without emotion. "Thank you for caring about my husband's health, Mandy. But after you left, I was the one who massaged him for 5 years." I caught sight of Ethan Jones's expression growing darker, while Mandy Johnson smiled faintly, as if she understood everything clearly. "Oh, I see, that's wonderful. You two carry on with your conversation. I'll head back to my room." I was momentarily stunned, and immediately trailed after Mandy Johnson as she made her way to the guest room. It was at that moment I realized the guest room had been completely transformed during the 2 days I had been away. The large flat Ethan and I bought had been designed under my careful supervision. I personally selected the furniture and decorations for our home, preferring a sleek, minimalist style with a modern touch. The primary colors for the walls, floors, and furniture were black, white, and red. Yet, upon seeing the guest room, I noticed that the furnishings and layout had been changed to reflect a romantic lavender cottage theme. As I watched Mandy Johnson in her long lavender dress, everything became clear. The alterations had been made to suit her preferences. The realization struck me like a bolt of lightning, leaving me furious. I stormed off to confront Ethan Jones directly. "What exactly did you mean when you said everything was negotiable?" I demanded. Ethan Jones gazed at me coldly, his face devoid of regret. "When I said that, I was hoping you'd come to understand my decision." Mandy Johnson lowered her head slightly, appearing apologetic, and glanced at Ethan with an expression of grievance. "Ethan, I seem to be causing trouble. Perhaps I should move out." Ethan Jones looked at her tenderly, offering reassurance. "The room is ready for you. There's no need to leave. Just stay here comfortably. I'll handle it." As he spoke, he shot me a pointed look, as if asserting his authority. I swallowed my anger, staring into Ethan's eyes. "Are you certain about letting her stay for 6 months?" I asked coldly. "Yes, I am," he replied firmly. My heart sank. "Fine," I said, my voice steady. Then the wedding house is yours. I'm leaving. As I packed my belongings, Ethan Jones, looking grim, wheeled after me. Emily Smith, can you stop being so stubborn? It's just 6 months. Can't you put up with it a little longer? He said. I spun around to face him. Ethan Jones, how would you feel if I invited an old flame to stay in our home for 6 months? He was taken aback, falling silent. I could tell he understood, but his concern for Mandy outweighed everything. After a long pause, Ethan finally spoke. Mandy and I grew up together. We shared a beautiful relationship in the past. Though we parted for specific reasons, she is like a sister to me. Fulfilling her last wish isn't asking for too much, is it? I met his gaze and replied flatly. Is that so? Then when she left you after your accident, that wasn't asking too much either, was it? I pointed out the harsh truth Ethan had been avoiding. His expression twisted with anger. Can you stop dragging up the past? He snapped. It was her father who sent her abroad. She couldn't control it. Tears welled in my eyes as I smiled bitterly. You know, Ethan, when I decided I wanted to be with you, my grandmother threatened to stop eating if I insisted on dating someone in a wheelchair. I knelt in front of her for an entire day and night before she finally agreed. Ethan looked startled, while Mandy approached him, genuinely remorseful. I'm sorry, Ethan. Back then, my father had bodyguards force me onto the plane. I even thought about jumping out of the car, she said. Ethan Jones immediately grabbed her hand, concern etched into his face. Don't say things like that. Jumping out of a moving vehicle is dangerous. What would I have done if something happened to you? He said gently. Watching this exchange, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. I remembered the day I knelt for 24 hours, unable to stand afterward. Ethan had come to pick me up, yet he showed no concern at the time. Now, at Mandy's mere mention of wanting to jump from a car, he was overwhelmed with worry. It was truly ironic. Even if Mandy told him she would die for him 100 times, Ethan would probably believe her without question. I said nothing further, picked up my bag, and made for the door. Ethan Jones remained indifferent, making no attempt to stop me. However, Mandy Johnson followed me outside. Emily Smith, are you really leaving? I'm sorry. Please listen to me, she said, her voice filled with guilt and urgency. The moment she stepped out and shut the door behind her, her demeanor shifted completely. Crossing her arms, she looked at me with smug superiority, mockery evident in her eyes. You suspected from the start that I wasn't really sick, didn't you? She asked. A wave of unease swept over me. I felt certain she was about to reveal something significant. By chance, I had been studying foreign languages recently and had a voice recorder in my pocket. On impulse, I pressed record. As I stood there silently, Mandy Johnson smirked. I told you I'm perfectly healthy. I don't have leukemia at all. Did you really think I'd disappear after 6 months? Forget it. I'm here to win Ethan back. At that moment, I heard the sound of the door lock turning. Ethan Jones stepped out just as Mandy dramatically collapsed to the ground. Don't! She screamed, falling hard and scraping her leg, blood seeping from the wound. Through her tears, she looked at me and cried out, I am aware that you dislike me and have no desire for me to stay here. You could express it kindly, and I would leave willingly. I have no objections if you push me out, but Ethan would be devastated. In that instant, Ethan Jones abruptly struck her across the face. Emily Smith, you have let me down, he said, his eyes filled with rage. He paid no attention as I collapsed to the floor, instead extending his hand to help Mandy Johnson, who remained intentionally on the ground. His face showed deep concern as he looked at her. "Mandy, are you all right? Your leg is hurt. Let me take you home and care for you." The two of them leaned on each other as they exited, leaving me seated alone on the cold elevator floor, feeling forsaken. Watching them from behind, I shouted, "Ethan Jones, Mandy Johnson is pretending to have leukemia. She is deceiving you." Ethan stopped his wheelchair, turned and looked at me with pure disdain. "Emily Smith, you have crossed the line. Mandy has been through enough, and yet you still choose to provoke her. Can't you show more compassion?" Overwhelmed with sadness, I covered my reddened face as tears trickled down. I spoke through my trembling voice. "One day, you will realize that I'm telling the truth. When that day arrives, I hope you won't regret it. You're so heartless. Don't expect me to believe you," he responded coldly, turning away once more and leaving me standing in the damp air. I steeled myself. "Ethan Jones, since Mandy Johnson matters more to you, we will not get married. The house we planned for our wedding is yours now. Marry her instead." His wheelchair paused briefly, but he didn't turn back. I smiled bitterly, my tone filled with sarcasm. "Oh, is that right? You disregarded my disability, defying your family's and friends' opinions. For 5 years, you cared for me tirelessly, claiming it was your choice because you wanted to be with me. Are you ready to let me go to another woman now?" "Yes, I am," I answered sharply. "Is that acceptable to you?" Ethan smirked condescendingly. "Fine, but remember, if you regret this later, don't come looking for me." Mandy Johnson spoke softly, addressing Ethan. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I disrupted your relationship." Ethan, still holding Mandy's hand, replied, "No, she should be the one to leave." At that moment, I saw Mandy, her back turned to Ethan, her eyes brimming with triumphant satisfaction. My heart sank. I fixed my hair, took a final glance at the shut door, pressed the elevator button, and stepped inside. As the elevator descended, pain flared in my knee. It was only then I noticed the injury. My black dress pants concealed the bleeding, but now a damp stain spread across the fabric. Earlier, when Ethan pushed me, I hadn't realized I was hurt. Limping to the entrance, I struggled with my suitcase, nearly getting caught by the automatic door. I felt completely lost until a large hand held the door open. A tall man lifted my suitcase with one hand while supporting my arm with the other, guiding me out. It was then I noticed his imposing, calm presence. "Your knee is injured. Let me take you to the hospital," he said. Without hesitation, he picked me up and carried me toward the Rolls-Royce parked nearby. His assistant swiftly exited the car, opened the door, and placed my luggage inside. The entire experience felt seamless and unreal, as if in a dream. It wasn't until I settled into the car that reality returned. "Thank you. I'm Emily Smith from the 21st floor. Do you live here?" I asked. "Yes, I just moved in yesterday," he replied. "I'm Liam Anderson, and I live on the 42nd floor." His name sounded familiar, but I couldn't recall where I'd heard it. Seated in the car, his scent, a blend of cologne and tobacco, created an oddly intimate atmosphere. Perhaps it was the Rolls-Royce's soundproofing or my exhaustion, but I unexpectedly drifted off to sleep. When the car stopped, I woke to find myself leaning against Liam Anderson, his coat draped over me. Flustered, I immediately sat upright, withdrawing from his embrace. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I blurted out. Liam smiled faintly. Not only did you sleep, but you drooled on my shirt, he teased. Embarrassed, I wiped his shirt with my sleeve. I'm so sorry. Let me clean it properly. The firmness of his chest left me unnerved. He furrowed his brow slightly, holding my hand gently. Don't worry, it's fine, but your injury looks worse now. We're at the hospital. As I opened the door to step out, Liam lifted me effortlessly, carrying me inside. Standing at just 65 centimeters tall and weighing 90 pounds, I felt like a fragile kitten in his arms. Liam's striking appearance drew attention from everyone in the corridor. Nervous, I hid my face in his embrace as we walked. He held me securely, guiding me to the reception area. A doctor, focused on another patient, called out without looking up. Please wait a moment. I'm with someone right now. I then heard a familiar voice coming from inside. Ethan, it hurts so much. It's fine, I'm here, don't worry. The doctor will take care of everything soon. I never expected to run into Ethan Jones and Mandy Johnson here. It seems they hadn't properly taken care of the wound at home. Ethan Jones really was driving recklessly. I didn't want to encounter those two. So I whispered to Liam Anderson, tugging at his tie. Let's move to another therapy room to wait. But Liam Anderson didn't catch me clearly and asked loudly, What did you say? I was startled. And just then, I heard Ethan Jones's cold voice. Emily Smith, is that you? I felt like I couldn't keep it together and tried to pull away from Liam Anderson's embrace. It's me, I said. Ethan Jones scanned Liam Anderson up and down with eyes full of disdain and hostility before directing his angry gaze back at me. How interesting. Just after leaving me, you find someone else to act with? Is this just to provoke me? If you regret it, just say so. Beg me and apologize to Mandy, and I can pretend like nothing happened. I found Ethan Jones's self-assuredness amusing. I hadn't realized before how narcissistic he was. I gave a cold laugh and replied, Do you really think I can't live without you, Ethan Jones? Don't be so full of yourself. I'm just here at the hospital for my injuries. Ethan Jones glanced at me, his eyes landing on my right knee, and his expression shifted slightly. You're hurt too. Why didn't you tell me? I chuckled lightly. You were only thinking about Mandy. How could I distract you? Beside us, Mandy Johnson spoke with a touch of grievance. I'm sorry, Emily. At that time, Ethan didn't notice. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let him ignore you. I couldn't care less about her complaints. So I turned to Liam Anderson and said, Let's change the treatment room. I don't want to see anyone unpleasant here. Liam Anderson remained expressionless, observing everything around him. When he heard me speak, he lifted me up and headed outside. I felt a bit embarrassed and was about to try to get down from his arms. But Ethan Jones quickly approached in a wheelchair, grabbing Liam Anderson's hand. All right, who told you to do that? Put my fiancé down and back off. Liam Anderson calmly waved his hand, pushing Ethan Jones aside, making the wheelchair spin around. He didn't look at Ethan Jones, but instead fixed his gaze directly on me. Are you really his fiancé? He asked softly. I shot a disdainful glance at Ethan Jones, sarcasm filling my heart. We've already broken up. Liam Anderson quietly responded, lifted me up and began walking out. But Ethan Jones wasn't backing down. He grabbed my hand and said with a mocking tone, Emily Smith, stop pretending. You just can't let go of me. You came to the hospital just to find me and make me angry, didn't you? Otherwise, why would you let another man carry you the whole way? Those injuries of yours must be intentional too, right? Furious, I shook off Ethan Jones's hand and shouted, "I'm not as pathetic as you. Let go of me." But he still wouldn't release my hand. Just when I felt desperate, Liam Anderson reached out, prying Ethan Jones's hand away. "Enough! Since she's already broken up with you, continuing to cling to her is harassment." Ethan Jones was pushed back by Liam Anderson, his expression darkening. He looked at Liam and asked, "How much did Emily Smith pay you to do this?" "Just name a price, and I'll double it if you leave." A flash of anger appeared on Liam Anderson's face. "I'll say this only once. I'm not an actor. I just saw Emily Smith hurt and helped her to the hospital. I don't care whether you're an actor or not. Let me make it clear again. I didn't agree to the breakup. Emily Smith is still my fiancée. Stay out of this." Ethan Jones came rushing over in his wheelchair, trying to grab me like a rogue. Liam Anderson, completely furious, held me with one arm and, with a clenched fist, delivered a powerful punch to Ethan Jones's face. The impact sent Ethan and his wheelchair tipping over, rolling a few times before coming to a stop. Mandy Johnson ran over, screaming, to help him up, but by then he was already hurt and bleeding from his head. Mandy Johnson, frantic and worried, tried to wipe the blood from his forehead. "Ethan, are you okay? Should we call the police?" Ethan Jones spat out some blood, gritting his teeth, and waved his hand. "No need. I want to find out who this person is that's willing to stand up for Emily Smith." Ethan Jones, his face stern, wheeled himself in front of Liam Anderson and asked through gritted teeth, "All right, I believe you're not an actor hired by Emily Smith. Tell me, who are you, and what is your relationship with her?" I knew Ethan Jones was a petty person who didn't want to drag an innocent person like Liam Anderson into this. Before Liam could respond, I spoke up. "We have no relationship. We just happened to run into each other on the road. If you have any grievances, direct them to me. But don't involve innocent people." Liam Anderson gave me a calm glance, offering a reassuring look, before slightly smiling at Ethan Jones. "You're not worthy of knowing my name, and I don't need to explain my relationship with her to you." After saying that, Liam Anderson looked at Ethan Jones as though he were trash, then took me in his arms and strode toward the treatment room. "Stop! You better stop!" Ethan Jones shouted, refusing to back down. As a well-known figure in the business, he couldn't stand being spoken to that way after the humiliation. In frustration, he shook his wheelchair and followed closely behind. At that moment, Liam Anderson's assistant stepped in front of Ethan Jones, coldly stating, "Ethan, know your limits. My young master is not someone you can provoke easily." Just then, a middle-aged doctor, dressed in a white coat and glasses, walked down the hospital corridor. Ethan Jones immediately recognized him as Richard Brown, the director of the Royal Private Hospital. Upon seeing Liam Anderson, Richard Brown quickly approached him, greeting him with great politeness. "Liam, what brings you here today? If you need anything, feel free to reach out, and I'll ensure the best experts assist you," he said. "No need for that," Liam responded. "A friend of mine has a scraped leg and needs some attention." Ethan Jones was stunned. Richard Brown, a giant in China's medical field, treated Liam Anderson with such respect. Is this the legendary Liam Anderson, the one at the top of the Chinese business world? Ethan thought, shock flooding his mind, and he couldn't help but gasp. Cold sweat quickly began to bead on his forehead. What kind of person is Liam Anderson? He's the most formidable figure in the higher empire. It's said that at a young age, he took control of Anderson Corporation and within a year defeated the four major families of the time, propelling Anderson Corporation to new heights, becoming one of the most powerful enterprises in hire. His approach to business is cold and decisive, and the mere mention of his name instills fear in the business world. On the other hand, although Ethan Jones also comes from an established family in the capital, his family has been in decline since his father's generation. Compared to the thriving Anderson family, his situation felt insignificant. He had always wanted to find an opportunity to work with the Anderson family, hoping to collaborate on something profitable. But he never expected their first meeting to happen under these circumstances, leading him to offend Liam Anderson, leaving him filled with regret. He was filled with anger toward Emily Smith. How could this woman get involved with Liam Anderson? In frustration and helplessness, Ethan muttered curses under his breath as he left the hospital with Mandy Johnson. Inside the treatment room, the doctor was tending to my wounds. My knee had been scraped, and it was still bleeding. I glanced out into the hallway and saw that Ethan Jones hadn't followed, letting out a sigh of relief. Liam Anderson looked at me and spoke calmly. "Don't worry, as long as I'm here, he won't bother you again." He gave me his number, telling me I could contact him any time if I needed anything. After my injury was treated, my stomach suddenly growled. Embarrassed, I glanced at Liam Anderson before looking down. He smiled and said, "I'm hungry too. Let's go eat together. What do you want?" He didn't give me a chance to refuse, looking at me intently, waiting for my response. At that moment, I felt an irresistible charm emanating from Liam Anderson. I asked if we could go for spicy hot pot. For some reason, I suddenly had a strong craving for it. Although I hadn't thought about whether someone as elegantly dressed as Liam Anderson would enjoy this type of street food, I still looked at him with some concern. "Or we could try something else. What do you think?" "Actually, I wanted spicy hot pot too. It would be nice to try it together with you," he replied. We found a roadside stall in a small alley outside the hospital and sat down. I thought a man like Liam Anderson wouldn't care about such things. But to my surprise, he not only helped me arrange my chair but also kindly informed the owner that I had a wound and couldn't eat spicy food, suggesting I order the plain soup instead. He didn't mind the shabby environment or the less than clean utensils at all. Instead, he happily kept me company while we ate. In contrast, I had been with Ethan Jones for 5 years, and he never let me eat from street stalls because he thought it was too dirty and undignified. Over those 5 years, I had endured many grievances while standing by him, as though he never noticed. Tears slipped down my face, unnoticed, falling into the spicy soup. Liam Anderson said nothing and didn't ask any questions. He simply handed me a tissue in silence. "Huh, you say it's nothing, but why did you rush here for a date before finishing your medication?" A discordant voice suddenly interrupted, making my heart tighten. Liam Anderson and I turned to see Ethan Jones, somehow catching up with us, though Mandy Johnson was nowhere in sight. Just as I was about to speak, Ethan Jones flashed a strange smile at Liam Anderson and said, "Liam, I must admit, I really misjudged you earlier at the hospital. I didn't recognize you. You look much younger than I imagined." Liam Anderson narrowed his eyes slightly and stared at Ethan Jones quietly. "What do you want to say?" Ethan replied, "I want to say that although you're much stronger than I am, it's really not appropriate for you, as Liam Anderson, to steal someone else's fiancée. Liam gave a cold laugh and said, "Ethan Jones, you're really shameless. Emily Smith has already broken up with you. If you keep bothering her, I won't hold back." Ethan chuckled. "Ha, Liam. It seems you really care for this woman. If you're so concerned, how about this? If you're willing to invest 100 million in my company, I'll give my fiancée to you." I never anticipated Ethan Jones would say something like that. My anger flared, and I grabbed the glass of water on the table, splashing it in his face. "Ethan Jones, you are truly disappointing. What gives you the right to treat me like a mere object and bargain with Liam?" "Don't worry," Liam reassured. "After all, you've loved me for 5 years. Think of this as a big favor to me. I believe Liam wouldn't mind letting go of this billion." Liam Anderson raised an eyebrow, looking at Ethan Jones with curiosity. "It's the first time someone has dared to set terms with me. What if I don't agree?" Ethan replied. "Then I could go around telling everyone that Liam, you tried to steal my fiancée when Emily and I were about to marry. If I'm shameless enough to gather a few people, stir things up, Anderson Corporation could face severe repercussions, potentially losing over 100 million. Liam Anderson chuckled softly, clearly entertained. "Not only are you negotiating with me, but you also have the nerve to threaten me. What a coincidence. I despise being threatened. You can do whatever you want, but I suggest you think carefully about whether you can handle the fallout." "I'll think about it," Ethan Jones said. "I know I can't defeat you, but I'm not afraid. You took my woman, and even if I can't win against you, I need to ensure you know I won't back down." After speaking, Ethan Jones's expression darkened, and he forcefully moved his wheelchair away. I looked at Liam Anderson with guilt. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this and wasting your time. You can go now. There's no need to stay. I'll take care of the rest myself." Liam Anderson gently placed his hand on my shoulder, his gaze firm. "Since I'm here, you can trust me to handle this. I, Liam Anderson, have never been afraid of threats." "Let's go. I'll take you back," he said. I always got sleepy as soon as I got in the car, and this time was no exception. I fell asleep immediately. When I woke up, I found myself no longer in my grandmother's small yard, but in a vast duplex mansion. I was lying on a soft, luxurious bed when Liam Anderson entered, holding a glass of water. "You're awake," he said. "You slept so deeply I carried you up here, and you didn't wake up. Drink some water." I quickly took the glass, glanced at the darkening sky, and realized I had slept the whole afternoon. "Is this your house?" Liam Anderson raised an eyebrow. "Technically, this is one of my many homes. Don't you recognize the view outside?" "Oh, I see. This is the top floor of the building where Ethan Jones lives. The most expensive duplex penthouse." I hadn't expected him to bring me to the house he had just bought, giving me my first real look at how luxurious the famous penthouse really is. Ethan Jones once said his biggest dream was to own a property called Thane Tung Chang. After working for several years, he managed to make a down payment for a flat on the 21st floor, worth over 100 million. However, the top floor duplex worth 500 million still seemed out of reach. I placed the glass down, feeling somewhat embarrassed as I prepared to get out of bed. "I'm really sorry for the trouble I've caused today. It's getting late, and I should go back now." As soon as I stood, the wound on my leg hurt so much that I almost collapsed. Liam Anderson quickly caught me, his brow furrowed slightly. "Why are you rushing to leave? Are you afraid I'll ask you for rent, or that I might do something. Liam Anderson held me close, and I could feel the warmth of his chest. I couldn't help but blush again, so I quietly responded, "No, it's nothing. If you're shy, just keep me company. We can chat to make the time go by faster," he suggested. That night, it was just the two of us in the big house. Liam Anderson surprisingly cooked 2 steaks by himself, and his skills were unexpectedly good. This moved me deeply, to the point of almost shedding a tear. Having been with Ethan Jones for 5 years, I had grown used to caring for him. Despite his limited mobility, he never helped me with simple tasks like serving food or pouring water. Liam Anderson, on the other hand, had even prepared red wine for us. We sat on the rooftop of the 2nd floor, enjoying steak and wine while admiring the night sky and the beautiful view of the northern part of the city. To be honest, during my time with Ethan Jones, he had never shown me such romance. Perhaps it was because I had drunk a bit too much, but we talked a lot. It was then I realized that Liam Anderson was indeed the mysterious business magnate people whispered about. I had always assumed he was at least 50 years old, but he was only 28. It had been 5 years since anyone had chatted with me, and I felt at ease. I might have had a little too much to drink. In my tipsy state, I felt a lightness in my body as Liam Anderson carried me back to the bedroom. He might have been a bit drunk too, and when he set me down, his unsteady stance caused him to lean on me. In that moment of close contact, I instantly felt a strong electric response. I could clearly feel my body heat up, and Liam Anderson's breathing also became heavy. However, at the last moment, we both pulled away from each other quickly, regaining control. The next morning, I woke up to a constant stream of message notifications and missed calls. When I checked my phone, I found hundreds of missed calls. My social media was flooded with private messages and notifications. I skimmed through some information and found a series of unfounded accusations and criticisms from strangers online. Some claimed that I, Emily Smith, fiancée of Ethan Jones, had betrayed him just before our wedding. It was truly shameful. Others questioned my 5-year relationship with him, accusing me of being a hypocrite after the fact. Leaving the private message page, I discovered that news of my rumored relationship with Liam Anderson was trending. The report claimed that Emily Smith, fiancée of Ethan Jones, president of Jones Corporation, was involved in a scandal with an unidentified figure just as their wedding approached. I was accused of betraying my fiancé and pursuing Liam Anderson from Anderson Corporation. Instead, it seemed my 5-year relationship had ended, with everyone stating that I only cared about the wealthy magnate. Seeing these false accusations, I immediately suspected that Ethan Jones was behind it all. I quickly got out of bed and left the room, only to find Liam Anderson deeply focused on his computer at the coffee table in the living room. When he saw me, he motioned for me to stay calm. "Don't worry. I've got this under control." Just then, I heard a loud noise, coming from outside the door, followed by voices. I was so startled that I instinctively moved closer to Liam Anderson. "What should we do? It must be those people from the internet causing trouble. Let's call the police quickly." Liam Anderson nodded and dialed the emergency number, but the knocking on the door grew louder. Someone seemed to be using a tool to break it open. Calmly, Liam stood up from the couch and positioned himself protectively behind me. Leading the group was Ethan Jones, wielding a tool, followed by a group of reporters. Furious, I shouted at Ethan, "You're shameless! You're the one who cheated, yet you're trying to blame me and Liam Anderson." But just as I finished speaking, a chorus of voices from dozens of reporters surrounded us. Liam, did you really steal Ethan's fiancée? Liam, have you and Emily already moved in together? Liam, there's a rumor that Emily seduced you. Is that true? Facing these direct questions, I saw Ethan Jones's cold expression and realized this was all his calculated provocation. However, Liam Anderson remained composed. He took the microphone from one of the reporters and responded, "Since everyone is so concerned about this matter, I feel I should make a clear statement. First, Emily has openly stated that she broke up with Ethan Jones and is now single, while Ethan's claim that she's his fiancée is just his personal opinion. Secondly, up until now, Emily and I haven't had any significant relationship. If we had to label our relationship, we could say we are neighbors or friends, though I wouldn't rule out the possibility of pursuing her in the future, as I do have feelings for her. Lastly, since we're both single and haven't formed any relationship, the concept of cheating doesn't apply." Liam Anderson made his position clear, and Ethan Jones wasted no time seizing the opportunity. "Ha, that sounds nice, but is it really that simple? Look at you two, wearing pajamas, and you were in the same room last night, and now you're saying there's nothing between you. Do you expect anyone to believe that? Liam, I know your family is powerful, but you shouldn't bully me." Ethan Jones's provocation was so obvious that it drew attention from several reporters and onlookers, all of whom were angry. "Right! Even if you're Liam Anderson, you can't just take someone else's fiancée." Ethan's boldness in challenging those in power was truly impressive, and it made many people support him. I looked at Ethan Jones's smug and resentful face, feeling completely hopeless and hurt. This was the man I had loved for 9 years, the one I had cared for with all my effort for 5 years. Now, for his selfish desires, he not only disregarded my feelings and dignity, but he also dragged the innocent Liam Anderson into this mess. I once believed that even if we separated, we should maintain some dignity. But it now seemed that I was the only one who thought that way. He never considered my feelings. Given that, I decided I wouldn't hold back any longer. I stepped forward and spoke into the microphone. "Although I know no matter what I say, you won't believe me, I'd like to play a recording for you all to listen to. Feel free to criticize me after that." I played the recording of my conversation with Mandy Johnson, which took place when I left the wedding house with Ethan Jones the previous day. Mandy Johnson's smug voice clearly came through the recording. She bluntly stated that I was pretending, that I didn't actually have leukemia, and that I was in good health. She said, "Forget 6 months, she can be with Ethan for as long as they both live. Do you really think surviving 6 months means getting rid of me completely? I'm back to take Ethan." Once this recording played, both the reporters and the onlookers were stunned, and Ethan Jones was left speechless, his mouth hanging open. I gritted my teeth, fixing my gaze on Ethan Jones. "Did you hear that? This is your first love, who just before we were about to get married, claimed to have terminal leukemia and insisted on moving into our wedding house so I could help her fulfill her last wishes. Ethan Jones, you think you're clever, but you've been manipulated by Mandy Johnson all along. I didn't want to bring this up and make you feel sad or embarrassed, but you forced me to do it." I then turned to the reporters and added, "You probably don't understand the significance of that recording, so let me explain. Ethan Jones and I were about to marry, but just yesterday, his first love, Mandy Johnson, returned from abroad. She was diagnosed with severe leukemia and only had 6 months to live. She wanted to spend that time with Ethan. Ethan moved her into our marital home and started living with her without my consent. I was furious and broke up with him. Imagine, dear reporters, if you were in my position. Would you accept that? Is there anything wrong with me breaking up with him? You can go check on the 21st floor. Mandy Johnson is still in our wedding house. As for Liam, he has just clarified that there is nothing going on between us. Even if we date in the future, that's our choice. It has nothing to do with Ethan Jones. This revelation instantly caught the press's attention, and the impatient reporters quickly grabbed their cameras and headed downstairs. At that moment, Ethan Jones stood frozen in shock from the recording I had just played, completely unable to respond. Noticing that a group of reporters was still gathered around me and Liam Anderson, reluctant to leave, I played another recording. This time, it was a conversation I had unintentionally recorded while having spicy hot pot with Liam Anderson earlier that afternoon. As I pressed play, the voices of Ethan Jones and Liam Anderson became clearly audible. Liam Anderson said to Ethan, "You really are shameless. Emily Smith has already broken up with you. If you keep bothering her, I won't hold back." Ethan Jones responded with a laugh, saying, "Wow. Liam, you're genuinely concerned about a woman. It seems you really have feelings for her. Liam, how about this? If you invest 100 million in my company, I'll hand over my fiancée to you. I, Ethan Jones, find you utterly repulsive. What gives you the right to treat me as if I were a commodity and negotiate with Liam?" Ethan Jones, don't be so rash. After all, you've loved me for 5 years. Think of it as a great favor to me when I leave. I'm sure Liam won't mind parting with that 100 million. Liam Anderson, this is the first time anyone has dared to make demands of me. What if I refuse? Ethan Jones. I might just spread rumors that Liam tried to steal my fiancée when Emily and I were about to get married. I'm sure if I have no shame and get a few friends to back me, the Anderson Corporation could face serious consequences, with losses likely exceeding 100 million. Once this recording gets out, I'm sure the reporters will turn their cameras on you. As soon as the recording played, all the reporters' expressions changed, and they focused their cameras on Ethan Jones. "No way! Ethan, you called us here so urgently, claiming you had something that would expose Liam's scandal. And this is what we get? Ethan Jones, you're shameless. This isn't exposing anything about Liam. It's just making a fool of yourself. You're awful, Ethan Jones. Not only did we fail to get any news about Liam, but we also offended him. How are we supposed to continue with our careers after this?" The crowd was furious, and several irate reporters surrounded Ethan Jones, pushing him to the ground. Amid the chaos, a woman screamed and wailed from the stairwell. "Help! Someone broke into the house and called me a mistress. They're attacking me." Mandy Johnson rushed in, disheveled, only to find Ethan Jones surrounded by reporters. I watched the scene unfold with a cold expression, unable to suppress a mocking smile. It seemed the female lead had finally arrived. The reporters quickly surrounded Ethan Jones and Mandy Johnson, with more journalists rushing in from upstairs, creating a chaotic situation. Fortunately, the police arrived soon after to restore order and assist the injured. In front of the police and the reporters, I firmly reiterated, "It's now entirely clear. I no longer have any relationship with Ethan Jones. As for Ethan's relationship with Mandy, that is no longer any of my concern. I urge all journalists to report the facts and clear up any misunderstandings. Just as I finished speaking, Liam Anderson walked over, took my hand, and glanced at the reporters. Seizing the moment, he announced, "I have something to say." Then, without warning, Liam Anderson knelt on one knee and earnestly asked, "Emily, would you be my girlfriend?" Although I wasn't holding any rings or flowers, having so many reporters and police around made the moment feel ceremonious. The sincerity in Liam's eyes moved me deeply, and this touching gesture captivated everyone present, sparking a round of applause from both the reporters and police officers. In the end, Liam Anderson forgave the reporters for their rash actions. Though embarrassed, Ethan Jones didn't pursue any consequences against them. After the reporters and police left, the four of us stood staring at each other at the door. Liam Anderson shot a cold look at them and raised an eyebrow. What are they still doing here? Are they waiting for breakfast? I saw Ethan Jones looking at me apologetically, his head bowed. "Emily Smith, I'm sorry. I never expected Mandy Johnson to deceive me. It's not too late. Please come back to me. Let's continue our marriage." I let out a bitter laugh. "Ethan Jones, you've always been so selfish, believing everything should go your way. It's been 5 years, and I've had enough. It's too late for everything, and I won't go back." Ethan Jones suddenly became frantic. "No! You've been with me for 5 years. I can't live without you. I honestly don't know how I would manage without you." At that moment, Mandy Johnson, standing nearby, bit her lip and reluctantly said, "Ethan, I came back from abroad just to be with you." Ethan Jones snapped angrily at her. "If you hadn't claimed you were at death's door, I would never, ever have let you stay in the wedding house that belongs to me and Emily Smith. It's you who ruined everything, ruined our 5 years together. Get out!" I could no longer hold my frustration in. Mandy Johnson, struggling to get up and hiding her bruised face, ran out crying. Liam Anderson glanced at me, extended his arm and said, "Dear girlfriend, this drama isn't entertaining anymore. Let's go home and create our own love story." I smiled and sweetly linked my arm with his. A month later, Liam Anderson proposed to me, and I officially became Mrs. Anderson. I heard that Ethan Jones's company went bankrupt, and he even sold his apartment on the 21st floor. In the end, he chose to jump from the roof of the building, ending his life. As for Mandy Johnson, her story is almost unreal. After pretending to have leukemia, she was diagnosed with it for real within 3 months, and it had already reached an advanced stage. She passed away a month later. Her fate perfectly exemplifies the saying that the ways of the world are cyclical, and that one must live with a clear conscience.